Does daily masturbation after 60 protect or destroy your prostate? What seems like a simple private habit may hide a secret capable of deciding between vitality or a silent collapse of your health. I am Dr. Ana Esperanza, urologist and pelvic surgeon, and for over 20 years, I have studied how sexuality directly impacts male longevity. Today, I will reveal what science has hidden for decades, shocking studies and forgotten stories that could completely transform your intimate health. Comment now. I want the hidden truths, because what you are about to discover until the very end could mean the difference between aging with vitality or carrying inside you a ticking time bomb ready to explode. You've probably heard someone say that masturbation is natural, harmless, almost therapeutic. After 60, many doctors even defend the idea that keeping the body sexually active is a way to prolong health. But what no one explains clearly is that there is a deep chasm between the myth of absolute innocence and a far more complex reality. Solitary pleasure may seem like a harmless habit, but behind it lie biological mechanisms that science has not yet fully uncovered, and some of them may be darker than you ever imagined. When we talk about the prostate, we're talking about an enigmatic organ, a gland the size of a walnut, yet one that holds the power to dictate the destiny of male health. For decades, it was believed that its role was limited to reproduction. However, more recent studies reveal that it is much more than that. It is a kind of barometer of male vitality. Changes in the prostate don't just affect sexual life. They can also be silent signals of more serious processes unfolding within the body. And here arises the unsettling question for men over 60. Is daily ejaculation a defense against prostate problems, or a trigger that accelerates decline? One of the most cited studies on this subject came from Harvard, where more than 30,000 men were followed for nearly 2 decades. The results showed that those with a higher frequency of monthly ejaculations, around 21 or more, had a lower risk of developing prostate cancer. This discovery made headlines, offering relief to many men who saw in the private habit not just pleasure, but a form of silent prevention. But the question almost no one dared to ask was this: if that is true for younger and middle-aged men, what happens after 60, when the body no longer responds in the same way? At 60, testosterone production has already declined significantly. The metabolism is slower, cell regeneration more fragile, and blood circulation less efficient. It is in this context that the dilemma emerges. A daily habit that once seemed invigorating may, over time, start draining reserves that are already naturally in decline. Some men report feeling lighter, even sleeping better after the practice, while others describe persistent fatigue, loss of energy, and even episodes of anxiety from maintaining a daily routine of masturbation. Who is telling the truth? Perhaps both. Science rarely offers absolute answers. Behind the statistics are individual stories that don't fit into charts. Imagine a 62-year-old man who, throughout his life, has ejaculated almost every day. For him, this habit was always about balance, a pressure valve against stress. But after 60, he begins to notice that his mornings are no longer as energetic. The strength for even simple tasks drains away faster. He wonders, is his body trying to send him a silent warning? The concept of prostatic stagnation is often mentioned by urologists, though not always explained publicly. The idea is simple but unsettling. When the prostate is not stimulated, secretions may accumulate, generating silent inflammation. This is the argument used to defend ejaculation as a kind of internal hygiene, a cleansing. Yet there is a counterpoint rarely exposed. Daily repetition may create the opposite effect, not giving the prostate enough time to recover between stimulations. It's like a machine that runs without rest. Sooner or later, the gears begin to grind, and it's in this delicate balance where danger lies. Masturbation, seen as a private, harmless act, may in fact be playing with invisible biological forces. Studies suggest that ejaculation releases hormones that help reduce stress and improve mood, but at the same time, each release consumes essential minerals like zinc, magnesium, and small amounts of free testosterone. In a young man, replenishment is fast. In a man in his 60s or 70s, the process is slower. The unanswered question is To what extent does daily practice strengthen prostate health? And at what point does it become a hidden thief of vitality? Another rarely discussed aspect is the psychological impact. Many men use masturbation not only for pleasure, but as a way to escape loneliness, frustration, and anxiety. The brain creates a reward cycle, flooding the body with dopamine. But in excess, this circuit can become a silent addiction, building tolerance. The more you do it, the less pleasure you feel. And what once seemed like a healthy habit becomes compulsion. Imagine what this means for the aging body: a more fragile nervous system, hormones in decline, and a mind trapped in a cycle that slowly drains life energy. Some doctors warn that the real danger is not in the act itself, but in the absence of balance. What is healthy stimulation can become invisible wear. The problem is, there is no magic number, no universal formula. The threshold differs from man to man, and the line between benefit and risk is thinner than most imagine. It's in this fragile uncertainty where mystery grows. While some studies celebrate benefits, others whisper warnings of consequences not yet fully understood. In discreet medical conferences, there have even been discussions about the possibility that excessive prostate stimulation may not only cause fatigue, but also recurring microinflammations that, over the long term, weaken tissue. None of this is said openly in clinics because there is no consensus. But the absence of consensus does not erase the shadow of doubt. And when it comes to health after 60, any shadow can be an omen. And so the question lingers in the silence. Is daily masturbation after 60 truly a shield against disease, or just a comforting illusion? On one hand, respected research proclaims its benefits. On the other, an increasing number of men tell stories of their energy being quietly drained. The truth seems to oscillate between two extremes, and it is precisely this oscillation that turns the subject into taboo. Because to admit that intimate pleasure could be an invisible poison is something few are willing to face. And here lies the most disturbing detail. Even those who defend the practice admit quietly that they do not know what happens when the aging body is subjected to the habit every day without rest. It is like walking on dark terrain with hidden traps beneath the surface. You may spend years believing you are safe until suddenly the ground collapses beneath your feet. And this is only the surface. You've seen that there are apparent benefits, but also warning signs that cannot be ignored. Now it's time to look at the other side of the coin, the one rarely exposed in public. Because while some believe daily practice is a shield, others have discovered it can become an invisible enemy, slowly draining vital energy until only fatigue and fragility remain. The uncomfortable truth is that after 60, the body no longer responds the way it once did. Every system, hormonal, circulatory, nervous, loses regenerative capacity. And when a habit repeats every single day without pause, what once seemed healthy may turn into overload. Picture an old engine that still runs, but needs longer brakes to avoid overheating. Daily masturbation may be seen as fuel, but in excess, it wears the inner gears down in silence. Some doctors have whispered about what they call prostatic fatigue, a controversial, unofficial concept discussed only in small circles. The idea is unsettling. Constant stimulation without proper recovery could create micro-inflammations that don't show up in routine exams, but when accumulated over years, may open the door to something more sinister. You won't find this term in textbooks, but you will find echoes of it in men's stories. Men who once felt reinvigorated by their daily release now admit to subtle shifts: foggy concentration, restless nights, sudden irritability, as if a silent drain had been opened inside them. And here enters a story few would dare to tell. A 67-year-old man, whom we'll call simply A, was convinced that his daily habit was the key to his vitality. Widowed at 58, he had leaned on solitary pleasure as both companion and ritual of defiance against aging. To him, it was proof that he still had life in him. To his friends, he would say, "As long as I do this every day, I know my strength remains." For years, A thrived. He slept well, believed his prostate was shielded, and saw himself as master of his fate. But at 65, the cracks began to show. Walks he once enjoyed became tiring. His energy drained faster, leaving him fatigued after the simplest tasks. His libido waned, yet he forced himself to continue, convinced that missing a day would mean surrender. Then came the routine checkup. The doctor noted mild prostate inflammation. Not life-threatening, not alarming enough for urgent action, but enough to plant doubt. The doctor didn't link it to his ritual. A himself began to wonder, had the very thing he trusted for protection become the slow poison weakening him from within? These kinds of stories rarely see the light of day. They don't appear in glossy journals or medical campaigns. Instead, they hide in the margins, anonymous forums, hushed confessions between patients and doctors, whispered accounts among men who dare to admit that pleasure can sometimes come with a price. For some, the daily habit truly soothes. For others, it is a fuse slowly burning toward collapse. The hormonal toll is equally unsettling. Each ejaculation consumes small amounts of free testosterone, zinc, and magnesium. In young men, these resources replenish quickly, but with age, replenishment slows, leaving gaps. Over months and years, these deficits may erode energy, resilience, and even immune strength. Imagine an account that keeps making withdrawals without deposits. Sooner or later, it empties. That's the quiet arithmetic of aging biology. And what of the mind? Pleasure is not only physical, it is psychological. What starts as a release can morph into routine, then dependence. The brain grows accustomed to dopamine surges and begins demanding them. The rush dulls, satisfaction shortens. What once was freedom becomes compulsion. Older men already wrestling with isolation and the slow erosion of identity that age can bring find themselves chained to a cycle that both soothes and weakens them. Each orgasm brings not just relief, but also a reminder of a body that takes longer to recover, a spirit quietly bound. Even more chilling is how silence shields this problem. Society rarely talks about male sexuality in later life. Clinics emphasize only the positive, the studies that comfort, the numbers that reassure. To suggest there might be risks, that pleasure might corrode as well as protect, is to step into taboo. And so, many men are left navigating blind, clinging to myths while their bodies whisper otherwise. Returning to A. After his diagnosis, he reluctantly began to scale back. He practiced every other day instead of daily. At first he felt uneasy, as though betraying himself, but then something shifted. His energy lifted slightly. His mornings grew clearer. He admitted quietly that maybe his ritual had indeed become too much. This doesn't mean every man must follow his path. It means only this: persistence in daily practice, when exhaustion and weakness are already knocking, may not be proof of strength, but of denial. And denial is dangerous, because the threshold, the hidden line, is not marked in charts. There is no universal number, no simple prescription. For one man, daily practice may still invigorate. For another, it may trigger decline. And the cruelest part? Often, the symptoms surface too late. By the time inflammation is detected, by the time fatigue has hollowed out vitality, by the time libido has collapsed, the price has already been paid. Meanwhile, research continues to celebrate averages, while individual lives tell another story. A paradox emerges: pleasure as medicine, pleasure as poison. The same act that one man calls healing, another names draining. The same ritual that gives hope may also ignite collapse, and no one truly knows which side they are on, not until the consequences reveal themselves. But what about those who can't stop? Men who confess they cannot endure a single day without release, not because of desire, but because of fear of anxiety, of emptiness, of restlessness too sharp to bear. For them, daily practice has ceased to be choice. It is compulsion. And compulsion, at 60 or 70, is not harmless. The body cries for rest, while the mind demands repetition. Each release becomes a shackle, binding them deeper into dependence. This is the hidden danger few dare to confront. Daily masturbation after 60 may be harmless for some, harmful for others. But when it crosses from pleasure into compulsion, from choice into necessity, it becomes something darker. And the line between health and harm, that hidden threshold, is thinner than anyone wants to admit. Because the question that lingers in the shadows is this: how can you ever be sure whether your daily ritual is protecting your prostate or secretly feeding the fuse of your own decline? And that is not even the biggest problem. Up to this point, you've seen how daily masturbation after 60 can be both ally and enemy. Prestigious research praises its benefits, while personal accounts expose hidden costs. Now we step into the most fragile territory of all, the gray zone where pleasure and danger blur, where the same act can heal or destroy, depending on a threshold almost no one dares to name. One of the most haunting paradoxes lies in circulation. Each ejaculation produces a surge of blood flow to the pelvic region. In theory, this flushes the prostate, keeping it active, preventing stagnation. Some doctors even call it internal exercise. But what is invigorating for a younger body can become strain for an older one. In men over 60, blood vessels are less elastic, tissues slower to recover. What once renewed may now fray. Daily surges may not cleanse, but instead overstress fragile capillaries, leaving behind micro tears that never fully heal. Over years, those silent scars may accumulate, setting the stage for chronic inflammation. The hormonal equation adds another shadow. Each orgasm releases dopamine, prolactin, oxytocin. In moderation, this chemical storm is a balm, calming stress, lifting mood, easing sleep. But daily repetition reshapes the balance. Dopamine tolerance creeps in. The rush dulls, pleasure shortens. Prolactin spikes repeatedly, muting desire and leaving men strangely unmotivated. Testosterone, already declining with age, is further drained. Zinc and magnesium, essential for prostate and immune health, are lost in small amounts each time. For younger men, replenishment is fast. For older men, it lags, slowly, subtly, reserves empty. What feels like routine pleasure may in fact be silent depletion. And then comes the hollowing. The symptom, no chart records. Men describe not just fatigue, but a void. A strange, gnawing emptiness that lingers after what should have brought relief. They wake less restored, they walk with less vigor, they sense a heaviness pressing down. Many dismiss it as just aging. Others double down, believing their ritual keeps them strong, blind to the irony that it may be eroding them. The mind is no safer. For some, daily masturbation is solace against loneliness, a way to cope with grief, boredom, or fear of irrelevance. At first it comforts, but repetition wires the brain. The body craves not intimacy, but the chemical reward itself. Soon, what was freedom becomes chain. Men in their 60s and 70s admit, though rarely aloud, that they no longer feel in control. They must continue, not because they want to, but because stopping terrifies them. Pleasure in these cases is no longer a gift, it is a cage. And yet not all stories are bleak. Some men insist their daily practice is their anchor. They sleep better. Their anxiety eases. They point to Harvard's famous study of 30,000 men, noting reduced prostate cancer risks. They call ejaculation a natural cleanse. For them, perhaps, it truly works that way. And that is what makes this subject so chilling. Two men can practice the same ritual. One emerges steadier, healthier, the other weaker, drained. Why? Genetics, hormones, diet, stress levels, the body's unique blueprint. The line is different for everyone. And here lies the riddle. If the same act can heal or corrode, where is the dividing line? Where is the hidden threshold? No study has pinned it down. Doctors avoid absolutes. Statistics speak in averages. But no man is an average. Each one walks alone, blind to where the ground may collapse. The older we get, the sharper the stakes. At 30, indulgence is forgiven by resilience. At 60, 65, 70, each choice weighs heavier. The body is slower to repair, quicker to falter. What once was harmless can now be hazard. Every orgasm becomes a gamble. One side of the coin says renewal, the other decline. The cruel twist is this: you only know the result after the cost has already been paid. Consider the contrast. One man of 70 clings to his daily ritual, proud, believing it keeps him young. He boasts that as long as he continues, age has not defeated him. But then quietly, symptoms creep in. Pain when urinating, pelvic heaviness, restless nights. Another man of 70 chooses moderation, spacing his practice. He swears his energy is brighter, his days steadier. Who is right? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. The unsettling truth is that certainty does not exist, and darker still are the men who cannot stop. They whisper their secret. It is no longer pleasure, but compulsion. Days without it leave them anxious, restless, hollow. They are not choosing, they are obeying. Their bodies beg for pause, yet their minds demand repetition. Every release is another link in a chain they can no longer break. At that age, compulsion is not harmless. It accelerates decline, draining reserves a frailer body cannot replace. Why is this not spoken of openly? Because to admit it would unravel comforting myths. Society prefers to tell men that sexual activity at any cost is a sign of health, that more is always better. Doctors hesitate to challenge this narrative, fearing stigma, ridicule, or backlash, and so the silence persists. Behind closed doors, men struggle with doubt, unsure if their secret habit is medicine or poison. Symptoms, when they appear, rarely announce themselves dramatically. Instead, they whisper, a night of poor sleep here, a day of unexplained irritability there, a sense of being drained after release rather than renewed. These are warning flares few recognize. By the time they do, the body may already be on the other side of the threshold. And this is the cruelest truth. The threshold is invisible. It is not the same number for every man. For one, it may be daily. For another, every other day. For yet another, only a few times a week. The danger is not in the act itself, but in the blindness to when the act turns from ally to thief. Because yes, there is a hidden threshold, and once crossed, the act ceases to be ally. Pleasure curdles into something darker, draining instead of renewing. And most men only realize it when they've already gone too far, when the threshold is behind them and recovery is no longer simple. There is a hidden threshold that can change everything. You've come this far, carrying a question you may never have spoken aloud. Does daily masturbation after 60 protect or destroy your prostate? The long-awaited answer is not a magic number. It isn't a universal formula. The hidden threshold is not written in manuals or buried in statistics. It lives inside the body of every man, disguised in signals that most ignore until it is too late. Science can show that frequent ejaculation lowers the risk of prostate cancer. It can suggest that the practice improves mood, eases stress, and helps with sleep. But science also reveals, in its shadows, that the aging body does not respond as it once did. Each orgasm consumes energy, minerals, hormones, and when the balance no longer adds up, what was meant to protect can instead become a silent thief of vitality. The hidden threshold is not a calendar or a number. It is an invisible breaking point, the moment when pleasure leaves more fatigue than relief, when energy fails to recover, when what once restored now quietly erodes. For some men, the threshold may mean every other day. For others, a few times a week. And for a small few, perhaps daily practice never brings harm. But the fatal mistake is to believe all men are immune. They are not. The body speaks, always. It whispers. Restless sleep, a sudden drop in stamina, irritability without cause, a weight in the pelvis that lingers. These are not random inconveniences. They are the ticking of an unseen clock, counting down to the line where pleasure crosses into loss. To ignore them is to carry a bomb inside, its timer running. And perhaps that is the darkest truth. Not every pleasure protects. Not everything harmless in youth remains harmless in age. After 60, masturbation can be medicine, or it can be poison. The line between them is thin, almost invisible, but it is there. And each man must have the courage to listen to his body and discover where that line lies. Crossing it may cost not only vitality, but also the dignity of aging with strength. What science cannot say outright, what doctors rarely speak above a whisper is this: the answer is not found in averages, but in perception. The hidden threshold is intimate, personal, non-transferable. It is your responsibility to read your own signals, to decide whether you will cling to the comforting myth of absolute protection or confront the unsettling reality that even pleasure demands a price. Now the choice rests with you. You know there is a threshold. You know ignoring it is a risk. The only question left is, will you listen to what your body is already trying to tell you? Comment now. I choose to listen to my body, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next hidden revelations about men's health. Because what seems like a simple private habit may in truth be the key to aging with strength, or the invisible trap that leads to irreversible exhaustion.